everyone, Carmen here, digital editor at Ms., and I'm here with Erin Vilardi, the founder and CEO of Vote Run Lead, which is a nonpartisan organization that trains women to run for office and then gives them all the support they need to make it possible. So I did want to sort of start off with just give us an overview of, what all of the things that Vote Run Lead provides for these women running for office, because I think it's just such an amazing suite of resources and knowledge, and I want everyone to know about it.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Love Ms. Been a long-time fan, long-time reader. Vote Run Lead trains women to run for office and win. We are looking at a sort of gendered, intersectional way of running for office. The new curriculum following the 2016 election, when we saw tens of thousands of women want to run, is called Run As You Are. And the whole purpose of that is that you don't have to change your hair, you don't have to change into a suit, you don't have to become this political robot, and that you already have the skills, the networks, the talents to run for office and win. So we can teach you the campaign skills, we will teach you the transferable skills of why you're the right person for the job, we will help you figure out what office is right for you. We've got about 60 online resources that are free, so you don't have to log in or anything like that. Everything from 10 things to help you decide if you should run, to something called the 90-day challenge, which allows us, gives us 30 actions in 90 days to up your political capital, sort of up ramp you. And then you can come to one of our day-long or multi-day trainings and really dig in and do your storytelling and really talk about why you're the best person for the job.
Awesome. And so what was your own journey towards Vote Run Lead? Like what sort of led you to launching the organization and taking it where it is now?
Sure. So I actually started Vote Run Lead as a program of something called the White House Project under Marie Wilson's leadership, who was the head of the Ms. Foundation for a long time. Awesome. So a lot of full circle love here, right? And what that allowed me to do was run a traditional field program with offices across the country. We would all get in our cars. We trained about 15,000 women. And we did that through networks with the women's funds and foundations. So we would go to grantee partners and say, hey, you should run for office. And they're like, no, I have to, continue to support and build this shelter. I have to, hold the community together. We were saying to them, you are the government in exile. You are already holding the community together. You need to create the policies and have the financial resources and budget behind that so that we don't need you to do that, right? These are some things we believe government should be doing. So when the White House Project closed, my various field directors and I got together. We went out to Duluth, Minnesota, sat on the lake, and decided that it was time to really re-up Vote Run Lead using technology as well as the face-to-face training.
Awesome. And what sparked your own interest in politics?
It's funny, I don't come from a political family, yet I was my class president in high school. I honestly, to be not, totally full circle here, but my sister had me subscribe to Ms. Magazine in the 7th grade. And she went off to college, she went to Douglas and sort of got that Feminist Studies 101.
Totally.
Which we all miss in our sort of public school education.
Yeah.
And that was that. She was, sort of indoctrinating me in the best club that there is, like feminism. And really began to see how the world would be a better place if women were in charge.
Yeah, and I love this idea of run as you are, and what we are seeing is, women running as women and as themselves more so than they used to. And, I think that really started with the shift that we saw with Hillary Clinton in 2016 versus 2008. And I'm just curious, what are some of the reasons you think it is so important to have that representation beyond the fact that, we know that if women are in office, then women's issues become a little more central. But what do you think women bring to politics that is different, that is so pivotal?
I really believe, though, that women have an understanding of gender that men see as sort of invisible. They don't understand it in a sort of daily life kind of way. So we actually, though, do government better. Yes, we bring an addition to the policy realm, but we have a perspective around economic policy that people aren't talking about. Why is equal pay important? Not just because it's fair and just, but because it actually contributes to the economy and builds communities. But on top of that, Women bring more money home to their districts. We're less likely to go to war. We're more likely to work across the aisle. We actually do government better. So people say to me all the time, oh, I'm not voting for a woman just because she's a woman. I'm like, well, you should. Because all the research says that we're better at government. So it's that kind of hustle. We're less likely to be driven by ego, more likely to have a long-term view.
Awesome. And I was recently talking to Soraya Shamali about her new book and sort of that idea that, gender and sexism in many ways is an intangible concept to so many men in our everyday lives, but also obviously what we saw, especially with what just happened with Brett Kavanaugh and these hearings is, that lawmakers are especially sort of ignorant to these issues of gender and the ways that women experience sexism every day. And in her book, she talks about how we need sort of a 70% majority to actually have influence in government. But I know that Vote Run Lead is also training people not just at that national level, but at that local level. So what do you think the impact is of, do you think that it's important that we start at that level? Do you think, how do we build this sort of infrastructure of parity versus... just sort of waiting for people to suddenly throw their hat in the ring for these very competitive races.
Yes, well, Carmen, you are nailing it on the head. It really is the infrastructure. I mean, if we look at this last week with the Supreme Court nomination and the men that were on the Judiciary Committee were there 30 years ago. That is because one of the things we did not do was build the local infrastructure. So what came out of 92 was a fantastic organization in Emily's list at getting that money for women at the federal level. But there are 519,682 elected seats in this country. That's 500,000 seats. And actually, if you're looking at rural communities and getting outside of where we have data, it's probably closer to 15% women's representation. So we really need to find what seat is, works for me, right? In some communities, it's dog catcher, and others, it's a judge. And so it's important for us to go, okay, what does that office do that builds my community? And we don't have to be running for Congress to make change. So showing folks that they can run for a county commission, that they can be on the city council for 4 or 8 years. They don't have to change your whole life to be political, and really making politics more accessible at that local level. Then you get a very natural farm team of women who are experienced, who have legislative background, who have built their political capital, have fundraising lists, and you have less need for the sort of special women stuff if we've been kind of rising up and really taking over local parties, being the chairmen or chairwomen. And that's the kind of infrastructure building that we're focused on at Vote Run Lead.
Yeah. So who are some of the candidates that Vote Run Lead is working with that you're most excited about?
Well, one of the women who is sort of rising to the top, who is, my favorite story to tell, is Ilhan Omar, the first Somali American who will be elected to Congress, who started out as a state legislator. So she came to our training in 2014 and 2015. She came to the webinar classes. We ended up using her as a trainer. And then when she was elected to the legislature, it was very historic. Now a seat opens up when Keith Ellison decides to go and leave his seat open, and she jumps in for it. But the best part of that story is actually 2 of our alumni ran against each other. And that's the kind of infrastructure building we want. So Patricia Torres-Ray, who is this remarkable woman, first Latina in the state Senate in Minnesota, also an alum through the training program. They're running a beautiful campaign against one another. It's not negative. It's engaging the community. Voter turnout was really high. And, there's video of them marching next to each other at the women's marches. So it's not just the infrastructure building, it's also how we campaign. We do that differently as well.
Yeah. And so what do you notice working with women candidates in all of these different, running for all these different positions and trying to get them interested in all these different positions at all these different levels? What do you think are some of the things that are holding women back?
Really understanding our own authority and expertise and claiming that in a way that says to voters, I trust myself. I know I'm the best person for this job. I'm asking you to trust me as well with your vote, with your money, with your time as a volunteer. And that is a mental shift that is hard for a lot of people, men and women, but is a bit tougher for women because we can fundraise for other causes. We're great number 2s behind the scenes, but being really vulnerable and putting it out there and going, no, I am the best person for this job, and I am going to compete head to head with this other person and tell you why you should be giving so much responsibility to me. And what our experiences are, people need to say, oh, I don't have a law degree, or I don't have these credentials. And they think that a political resume is very standard. We're really breaking that mold and telling women, nope, you being a hairdresser for 30 years in the community says you have fluency within your community. And how do you transfer the skills that you do have into the political scene? So those are two sort of really important things on just the mindset.
Yeah, and you've also talked a little bit about 1992, the Year of the Woman, which came after the Anita Hill hearings. So, there has been all this talk about, is this going to be the next Year of the Woman? And I mean, that's been, sort of an ongoing thing since 2016. And I'm just curious, if we know now what the Year of the Woman looks like, about 30 years out, what do you think the impact of this particular moment for women is going to be in politics at different levels?
I'd like to see permanency. I want it to be permanent. I want the wave to not be just, a single crest, but sort of this consistent, sort of crashing into the shore every 2 years, every 4 years, every year. There's something like 20,000 school board seats that are up for election in 2019. And so we're really thinking about running a specific campaign on run for the school board, right? What are we teaching our kids? What are we feeding our kids in the school system? And, we're looking at racial disparities within these communities. All of that can be changed at a local level. So I think the permanence is the thing that for me would be the most successful.
Awesome. And as you've dealt with this sort of groundswell of candidates, how has that impacted your work? Like, has it shifted your vision? Is there sort of a new goal that you all have?
Yeah. So our goal now is to train 30,000 women by the end of 2020.
Amazing. So how many of the people watching right now have to sign up?
All of you, 100%. Partially I say that because just think about running for office and take the steps. You don't have to say yes to it by signing up to a training or watching an online webinar, right? Just begin to understand the language of politics, so that when something does come up or a seat opens up or somebody says you should run or you should be on the community board or, there's local offices here in LA that are community oriented, you don't freeze and go, no, not me. You actually have a little bit of that political education, that political literacy. So everybody should sign up.
It's like your new morning mantra is, I could run for office if I wanted to.
That's right.
Totally. And I mean, as the midterm elections sort of heat up, what's it like over there at Run Lead HQ?
Yeah, well, what's exciting is that we, the primary season, we saw 179 women run.
Awesome. Specifically from your program.
Which is huge. We would have a couple dozen previously. 79% of them advanced through their primary, which is crazy huge because usually 10% of new candidates go through a primary, and 81% of them are running for local office. So that's what we want. So we're working at a different volume, but we are already looking to 2020. We are not a campaign in the sense of individual candidates, right? We're looking at this wave of women. So we're hustling for November 12th. It'll be live on Facebook Live as well. It's a national town hall, conversations with some of these new congresswomen, really radical conversations about what happens now with the Republican Party. Can we get Republican women to step forward for women in a way that I think we're a little disappointed with this past week? And really having those challenging conversations. Again, the goal of 30,000 by 2020, we're trying to open up offices around the country and scaling our digital program and hiring new staff, and it's been a little crazy.
Awesome. Well, and now that you've also touched on that, I'm curious because you all are nonpartisan, so you're training candidates from a range of political affiliations, and you've talked a little bit too about the differences that women have as leaders and the way that we, do politics a little differently. What do you notice translates? Do all of those things translate party to party? Like, have you noticed that across party lines? Because we've done a lot of exploration too around the ways that, women, having more women in any party is going to make that party more sensitive to women's issues. Have you observed any sort of interesting overlaps there between women running from different parties?
So what we're seeing is we definitely mirror the national trend. We have more Democratic, left-leaning women running and signing up. But what I will say is that the Republican women who are coming forward are very disappointed with the current state of their party. We don't get a extreme. On the right, one, those women often don't identify with a sisterhood or with a women's initiative. So there's a little bit of self-opting out. So the population I'm talking about is women who are willing to come to a women's leadership training. Yeah. And for those women, there's a bit of disappointment. They don't recognize their party. And then at the local level, it doesn't matter as much. The hyperpartisanship happens as you move up. So at the local level, they're running as a Republican. Their town is Republican. That's how you run. That's how you win. 90% of the county board is Republican, and they want to get something changed with, stop signs. And so we have a huge conversation in our private Facebook group about, do I have to run with any party? That the sort of team mentality isn't really there at the local level, that my identity is with a Dem or my identity is with an R. It's very interesting. So really thinking about how many nonpartisan seats are out there, what can happen and experiment at the local level with cross-party stuff that we could model for the national level. It used to be that the women in the Senate came together on both sides. We actually need to see how that works at state legislative levels and city council levels.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of the women running, I think, nationally right now have, spoken about this idea of being disappointed with, what's happening in Washington with respects to women's lives and women's experiences. What are some of the more local issues that are motivating these women to run now in this wave?
I mean, I think part of it is the qualifications issue. They look at Donald Trump and they see someone who has no political or military background and was able to become president of the United States. And they're like, I can become a city council member. So there's been a huge shift in qualifications thinking, personally, that you're the right person for the job. But the issues that are motivating women to run for local office are, on one hand, they are demographic in the sense that they're looking at government, local government, and going, nope, these guys have been here for 30 years. Their photos and headshots on the website are also from 30 years ago, right? We need some updating in government. But the motivations truly are, water in my community is, sparse, and the revitalization. It's really those local issues that at the end of the day, you heard Danica Rome talk about it, right? It was traffic and, very local stuff. So while there may be some motivation, of course, on the identity side and saying, nope, we need a government that looks like us, which is very valid, it's also about serving your community and being that public servant for women.
Totally. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us
Thank
today.
You, Carmen.
I'm excited for so many more years of the woman.
Yes.
Making every year the year of the woman.
That's
until
right. I love it.
The end of time. But yeah, and we will definitely keep everyone posted on what Vote Run Lead is doing and the exciting stuff that you guys have coming up. And I can't wait to tune into this town hall too.
It's going to be great.
On November 12th.
Yes. Monday, November 12th.
Awesome. I'm get ready for it. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you guys soon.